Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, back again with our friend, the Civic. I believe it's a 1999 Civic. I believe it's an EX. Yeah, it's got a sunroof. I believe it's an EX. It has a 1.6 liter Y8 block that we've put in this vehicle twice, for those of you that have been following Eric the Car Guy. Recently it came in for a check engine light for the speed sensor. In addition, it had codes for I believe an intake air temperature sensor, and oh yes, the other code was for the O2 sensor heater. I remember now. And that whole debacle, there was an issue with the aftermarket exhaust manifold. When you tried to screw the O2 sensor in, it bottomed out against part of the casting that wasn't properly machined away, and as a result it bent up the end of that O2 sensor. I corrected that problem, installed a new O2 sensor, cleared that last code that we had when we took it on our test drive for the speed sensor, and all is well with the world. Check engine light was out, everything else. Well, as I was saying, no sooner did I come to pick the vehicle up and they were driving away, and she said the check engine light was on almost immediately upon leaving, which kind of puzzled me. You were there. And also the other thing is not only was the check engine light on, but it was flashing. Anytime you have a flashing check engine light, it indicates that the computer has detected a fault that could be damaging to the catalytic converter or damaging to the engine itself. So it's a flashing check engine light means, hey, pay attention. There could be something bad happening here. It's back. Let's get a look at it. Let's hook up our scanner and find out what code it has and take it from there. Well, for starters, as far as the production date is concerned, I actually just looked at it. It's 3 of 98, so it's actually a 98 Civic, not a 99 Civic, my bad. But we have hooked up our handy scanner, and I'm about to push the button and find out what codes it has. It's attempting to communicate. Okay, we have a cylinder number 1 misfire, P0301, and it's a 1 of 1 code, so that's the only code we have stored. This code was not present the last time we pulled the codes, but it is now. So well, I think I'm going to start by looking at the ignition system. It was kind of damp the day that they picked it up. Maybe there's something going on with the ignition system. When I'm speaking of the ignition system, I'm talking about the secondary side of the ignition system, which would include the wires, the cap, and the rotor. If they're arcing or something like that, then perhaps they could be causing the misfire, particularly on cylinder number 1. I'm going to start by pulling the plug wire out. It looks maybe a little crusty, but nothing to really write home about. I'm not seeing anything on there that's going to give me any concern. I know what plugs are in because I put them in. So I'm going to start the engine, and I'm just going to spray everything down with a little bit of water and see if I can get it to act up. Alright, now that it's warmed up, I can actually see that it's got a little bit of a shake to it, and it's got a little bit of a pop out of the tailpipe as it runs. Let's start, like I said, by just soaking the ignition system down to see if we can make it worse. And I'm especially aiming for the parts where like 2 wires touch. Like right in here is a good place. I'm going to soak the distributor cap down right around the seal. Now you don't want to put your hands on here now that it's all wet, because if the wires are breaking down and you touch them, you could get a nice little surprise. I'm not seeing any arcing or anything. Down in here is my prime suspect, but I don't really see anything at all. Now, only because I've had issues with this recently am I going to try this, so I'm just going to check around the intake manifold and squirt a little water there. Okay. I think we found our problem. I'll give you a closer look. Now, I'm just using water here for this. I can almost stall the engine out by spraying it right here.
also right here, right at cylinder number 1. You can almost see the broken gasket.
So we need to remove the intake from this engine and replace the intake gasket.
Wouldn't it be great if all we had to do was remove these fasteners and push this thing back? Well, there's some fasteners that are underneath here, but more importantly, there's a bracket that supports the intake manifold that bolts to the back of the engine block. So in order to access that, we're going to have to raise the vehicle a little bit and sneak up from underneath. So I guess my first step is going to be raising the vehicle up so that I can access that brace in the underneath.
Alright, now we're under the car, under the engine, and this is the stuff that we're after. This bracket right here needs to be undone. There's a couple of fasteners right across the top of the back there, but also there's a couple right here above the exhaust, like above this bracket. So I'm going to remove these two here above this bracket, and I'm also going to see whatever fasteners up underneath here that I can access and reach. There's some fasteners for the intake manifold itself that we can get to. It's a lot easier to get to them with this bracket out of the way, or else I'd just, loosen the bracket. But it's actually going to be much easier to remove it. A lot of this, it's just there's just not enough room for the camera and me, so I'm just gonna show you what I can. But otherwise, just know that I'm working on your behalf. I'm going to start with these upper fasteners. They're 12 millimeter. It's a 1/4 inch. Can reach up in there nicely. Gear wrench would also work for this. You know what? I might leave that. So I'm going to go for I might leave that for when I go up top. But I'm just going to go for these fasteners that hold the exhaust bracket along with this intake manifold bracket. I'm gonna see if I can get those loose. And to help relieve the tension, I'm also going to knock these loose down here. I'm not going to take these all the way off because it's really not necessary, but I am going to loosen them so that, as I said, I can relieve the tension on the bracket. And that way these other fasteners can come out a lot easier. Once again, I apologize for not being able to bring you up in here to see exactly what's happening, but as I said, it's be difficult at best to give you that kind of detail on this video just because of the location of these components. Another 12 millimeter here. I'm going to store these up under my floor jack because it's a good place to put things. That way you don't kick them and they don't go shooting across the shop floor. Alright, now I'm going to jump up top real quick just to get those upper fasteners. You can come with me for that. Okay, you can see the two upper fasteners to this bracket right here. There's one there and one there. There's two of them that hold the upper part of the bracket on. One, it's also a 12 millimeter. And two. So that's fallen down a bit. We can go retrieve it from underneath. Then we can access some of those fasteners from the underside of the intake that we won't be able to get to from up here. Just as an aside, if you're curious about where the fasteners are located, you can just look at the gasket itself. You can see you've got one under here, one under here, and one under here. And the rest of these fasteners are going to be at the top. So you've got these four at the top, this middle one probably accessed from underneath. These ones on the side you might be able to actually reach from up top also, but
Definitely this one in the center is going to have to be removed from underneath because I don't believe you're going to be able to have access. The PCB is in here. All right, here's our bracket, which hopefully, through a little bit of acrobatics, you might have more of a fight because of the things that this thing might be hooked to. But as I said, I had this engine off recently, which makes it so that I can get up in there. Now, in this area up underneath this harness above the oil filter is going to be that one fastener right in the center of the intake manifold that I'm only going to be able to access from under here. I might also take, there's a 10 millimeter holding that harness onto the back of the engine. I might also take that out just so that I can move it around so that I can gain access to that fastener. But that's where I'm going next. Okay, what do we got? I'm gonna go for that 10 on that harness first. Got this considerably longer extension. That PCV is like right in the way. And you want to be real careful around the PCV system. It usually gets hard and brittle, and these parts are really expensive and specialized, so just be very, very careful around those hoses and things. All right, I was able to pull the PCV line out, which I think is going to give me the clearance that I need. And I'm going to pull that through from up top. All right, we've disconnected this from under. I'm going to do what I can to fish it back up through. There we go. The valve and everything's still intact. But the fastener I'm going for is here, and it's possible that I could sneak down through from this angle, but I just think it's easier from underneath. But the rest actually is going to be fairly easy from up top here. So in a way, it could be said that this is the most difficult part of the job, is getting access to this stuff underneath. Once you overcome this obstacle, I think you're good. That seemed to reach it quite well. And as I suspected, it came loose very easily. Now it's just a matter of removing it. I'm really grateful that fell all the way out. There's our prize. Now the rest I think we can do from up top, and that's exactly what we'll do. All right, before we go there, I'm gonna remove my cardboard. Get that out of the way, and I'm going to put a catch pan up underneath because there is a coolant passage that goes into this intake. So no sooner will we move this intake away from the cylinder head than it's going to start to leak coolant out. To address that situation, we're just going to slide this under to catch any coolant that bleeds out. So now I'm readying myself for work up here. Now I think I'm going to start by removing this snorkel. Simple enough, and it gives me all that room now. We can get to this fastener right here, which is one, and then there's these other two up top. I come around here, move the PCB, and here's the other one there. So we've got one there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across the top, and this intake is loose from the cylinder head. We can get a close-up view of that gasket. So I actually think I'm going to start over here. I'm going to start with that one down on that side. I'm just going to get to this one with a 12 millimeter wrench. All of these intake fasteners are 12 millimeter. The beauty of this is how it's just here, so these come off very easily. There we are. Got these other two. Just break those loose. This one's a bit trickier to get to, so I'm going to do the same thing I did from underneath and try to sneak in from this angle. Seems like everything's in the way. But rest assured, there is a 12mm fastener at the other end of this ratchet that's coming loose as we speak. And I'm just going to reach down. Okay, there's our prize. I'm just putting all that stuff up here on the windshield. And then we've just got our other two, which we can do the same thing we did on the other side. And some of these are kind of loose. Another one. And then we have our final little guy here. As you can tell, the weight of the intake is on it. You may start to hear the coolant dribble out at this point. If I had two hands right now, I would just lift up on the back of the intake to get this last fastener off. You can see the weight of it's already causing it to pull away from the cylinder head, and you can already see where the places where it's cracked is. Okay, it seems you have the best view from this angle. I'm just going to lift up and just push the intake back. And you hear that coolant start to come out and make sure it's being caught. And it'll go back just far enough to where you can gain access, but you can survey the damage, which is right here on cylinder number 1. You can clearly see how this gasket, although brand new, has split right here. Looks like that's the only place that it's split. Oh, here's another one right here on cylinder 3. I don't know if you can see that. But these cause vacuum leaks, which in turn cause lots of problems, and it looks like I don't have the correct gasket here. I thought I did, but it looks like I've got 2 holes over there, and I don't know if that's what I have. Well, I think I do. Let's go check the new gasket, see what we got. You see a slightly different configuration here. So I don't think that the gasket that I have here is going to work. I'm going to have to check to see if I have another one, but... Okay, I'm just going to come in with a regular gasket scraper and try the best that I can just to save as much of this, because the more of this that I can save from sticking to the cylinder head, the better. This is going to be probably the most difficult part of this whole process. One of the main obstacles is these studs. It's going to come out in chunks no matter what. And I guess you just go for the big chunks first, and then slowly but surely scrape off the remains. And in a way, it's fortunate that this didn't go on there that long ago. That means it should come off fairly easily. And for the most part it is. It's kind of flimsy and wet, like it's got no substance to it. And I know it's just a paper gasket, but I mean, it feels, I hate to say this, but flimsy for even a paper gasket. I'm really trying to focus on the area around the intake inlets themselves, because that's where it's imperative that it seals well. Alright, I'm going to finish with this old piece of I guess it's almost like scrubbing pad, but it's a little more industrial. I'm not going to use sandpaper in here because I don't want to get any of that stuff into the intake, but this will help polish up those surfaces a little bit, just to get rid of the bumps and everything else that might still be there. It's not going to require a lot. Like I said, I don't really feel comfortable going in here with any sandpaper or anything. If I use sandpaper and little bits of sand got down inside the engine, that wouldn't be helpful. So there we are. We're pretty much ready. You can see that the intake manifold itself is very clean. So I don't have to do anything to that, thankfully. So all I need is a gasket. All right, now I went digging through my pile of parts, and I did find this one that has the two holes here. The only thing different is it has this area at the top, which I believe is for a slightly different intake manifold. But if this works, I think we're good. Well, let's see if it fits. I believe it does. Well, if that's the case, I'm just going to reinstall this intake since I'm here. I don't mind that little bit extra's sitting up there. Now I've got them all installed. I'm not going to snug them up yet. I'm actually going to snug up that center one first. So it's time to go underneath and install that fastener. Okay, I'm actually going to try to install as much as I can, starting with that center nut up on there. I'm going to try to run the bracket and all of this in here while I'm in the neighborhood. With that bracket out of the way, it's nice and easy to reach up in there to get to that fastener. Okay, that's tight. Next, I'm going to do the 10mm on the back of that harness that I use to sort of move out of the way. Sorry I can't get you up in here, but sometimes there's just not enough room for all of us. And now let's fish our bracket back up in. Now that this bracket here is loose, it's sort of fallen to the side, so you gotta make sure you thread it through both the bracket and that other lower bracket when you run the fasteners in. And you don't want to tighten anything down all the way just yet. You want to make sure that you have all the fasteners installed first. Let's get those ones up top. Okay, we have these two 12s up here. I just realized that I want to fish my PCV stuff back down through before I get this bracket nailed down. That way I got a little wiggle room in case I need it. Okay, that's down through the intake. Let's go through here. Let's go under there and hook that back up first. That came down through the center here. There's a box underneath with a little rubber O-ring that it goes into. It's really all by feel because I can't even see where I'm going here. I feel like it went home there. Now I'll know that that bracket won't be in the way while I try and finish that up. Yay! Once we get one started, we're pretty much in. And while I'm up here, before I tighten that down, I'm going to tighten this intake to the head first. Get it snugged up. This way, I know that the intake is in the right position before I tighten down the support. And that way I'm not putting anything into a bind. And these lower ones I'll get here in a minute, the ones that were down underneath. That ratchet is under there, but I'm going to tighten these top two first. There we go. There's a wiring harness up here that passed through a clip. I'm just gonna hook up real quick. There we are. Now to tighten the rest, tighten these other fasteners the rest of the way. There's these two that terminate above this bracket. And we're done under here. Yeah, let's bring this home and tighten these last two fasteners up. All right, now, well, I guess we hook that there intake tube back up and top off the cooling system and start this thing up and clear the codes. Now we will clear the codes and start it up, bleed the cooling system out, and take it for a drive. See how it's doing then. I'm fairly confident it's fixed. It's a little shaky starting out, but that was probably just some gunk that was down in there that seems to have cleared itself out.
Sounds good now.
Seems to be okay all the way up through the RPM range, at least for now. I think we might have fixed it. Alright, I've been driving this thing for about a good 20 minutes now at speed, and I've got no check engine light, no nothing. I think we can call this one fixed.
Well, fixed or not, it's leaving. It appears to be fixed. Like I said, I took it out for a nice long test drive. The check engine light never came on, it was never flashing. My experience with misfire codes, especially early on in misfire detection that was mandated by OBD2, they aren't as accurate as they could be. So you may get a misfire for cylinder number 1 like I kept getting here, but it could be another cylinder. The way misfire codes are read is they take readings from the crank sensor and the cam sensor. Mostly I believe it's the crank sensor that they do this with. And they look for an acceleration of the crankshaft every time that there's an ignition event, a firing event. And if they don't see the right amount of acceleration when they should see it for what they believe to be a given cylinder, it sets a code for that cylinder. So even though it was saying cylinder number 1, it might have been cylinder number 4, or maybe spark plug on cylinder number 1 was bad. All I know is that they aren't always accurate. So you can't always take it as law as if you get a misfire code for a specific cylinder. I would approach all the cylinders. Yes, in this case we had a broken intake gasket for sure on cylinder number 1, but we also had one on cylinder number 3, and when I went back to check the codes again, you could see that cylinder number 3 had also had a misfire, and in addition to that, there was P0300, which is a misfire for just in general. It's like, I don't know what cylinder, but we got a misfire. And misfires are the things that will cause your check engine light to flash, one of the things anyway. Probably the main thing, because those misfires can damage the catalytic converter or possibly damage the engine. Hence the reason they really want you to know and they flash that check engine light. But misfire codes come in all shapes and sizes, have many different causes, but I've been burned on one recently as far as an intake gasket, so don't rule out intake leaks. Intake, I tell people all the time, you know, with performance issues, idle issues, a lot of those things are caused by vacuum leaks of some shape or form, and there's quite a few intake gasket leaks. I know General Motors is famous for them on their V6s in particular, and these Hondas from time to time, same thing. And recently I did something on a Nissan. So, you know, and they can cause all kinds of problems. They can cause misfires, like I say, idle fluctuation, just generally poor gas mileage. Also could set O2 lean codes. There's a myriad of things that vacuum leaks can cause. So keep an eye out for those. And misfires, like I say, come in all shapes and sizes. So it could be spark plugs, it could be ignition system or fuel delivery, a fuel injector not working. But in general, the takeaway is you got to take misfires as they come, and you got to go about it in a systematic way. I usually start by checking the ignition system. It's the most obvious, easiest thing to check. Other than that, I got to break out fuel pressure gauges and that kind of thing and start, you know. And sometimes I just listen to the fuel injectors. I'll get out my stethoscope and I'll listen to them. If I don't hear a click at all, sometimes that can indicate that an injector isn't firing, but don't assume it's the injector. You got to check to see if the injector is getting a signal to fire. It could be that the computer's not firing it for whatever reason, or there's breaking the wiring, what have you. Once again, misfires. This is only one of many videos I'm sure that I'll be doing about misfires. Anyhow, on this 1998 Honda Civic, and yes, I did check the oil, and the oil level is good, so we don't have to worry about that, so we can send this thing down the road. And hopefully it won't be back anytime soon for any engine related problems. So we'll be happy to see it go away. Anyway, I am Eric the Car Guy. You can always find me at EricTheCarGuy.com, where if you have automotive questions, I would ask that you post them or type in a couple of keywords to our search function and see what you come up with there. And if you can't find an answer with the search, ask us over at the forum. We're more than happy to help you. Also, you can find me on Google+, Facebook, and Twitter. And I close with, be safe, have fun, and stay dirty. And, you know, misfires, man. I'll see you next time.